It should have been discussed. We're finding out now, as each week rolls by, more and more, it's pretty obvious that COVID, the origin of it was the lab. I think in 50
Mm.
years, when people look back, they'll say, wait a second, there was a lab in Wuhan where the disease started that was studying this disease and using gain of function research on it.
Mhm.
And they were debating whether this was the cause of it.
Whoa, things have changed from 2020 to 2025. This is Bill Maher on with Stephen A. Smith on the Stephen A. Smith Show. He's not on ESPN right now, y'all. He's not on Disney directly right now, y'all. I mean, once you work for Disney and he's still getting a paycheck from him, you always represent him. So he's out on a limb right now. I wonder if Stephen A. Smith has gotten approval from Disney, but this also isn't Club Random. Bill Maher joins the show and he's spilling the tea. He's still salty about what happened during the Koof Koof. But we're going to talk about way more than that. We're going to get into TDS, also known as Trump derangement syndrome. And Bill Maher is half woke, half right. Let's get into it. Stephen A. Smith on with Bill Maher. Club Random, Stephen A. Smith Show.
Now, it could have been the
Mm.
wet markets. Absolutely. We don't know for sure. But the fact that we weren't even allowed to discuss that it was coming from a lab, which again, it probably was now, we know.
Let's take a flashback to 2020.
Jeff O'Donnell was good. Look, no need for testing. We have to move at the speed of science. Quote from the science spokesman. Are we going to do this whole thing again? Are we going to do, Jeff, are we going to do this thing? Remember when Jon Stewart, one of my favorite clips of all time, Jon Stewart was like, he set it up so good too. He was like, science, I love science.
And I honestly mean this. I think we owe a great debt of gratitude to science. Science has, in many ways, helped ease the suffering of this pandemic, which was more than likely caused by science. So,
one of the greatest segments of all time I've ever seen on TV. It's definitely over the last 3 years. Remember, I said it felt like the little flu I had. It felt like a bat, like some type of old disease-ridden bat.
maybe a bat flew into the cloaca of a turkey and then it sneezed into my chili and now we all have...
Yeah, it's like, and he was like, who could we ask? He was like, are we going to do this again with China? Like, who could we ask about this pneumonia in China?
There's a chance that this was created in a lab. There's an investigation.
A chance?
Well, but
oh my
if there was
God.
evidence, I'd love to hear it.
There's
I just don't know.
a novel respiratory coronavirus overtaking Wuhan, China. What do we do? Oh, you know who we could ask? The Wuhan novel respiratory coronavirus lab. The disease is the same name as the lab.
One of my favorite. The disease is the same name as the lab.
The disease is the same name as the lab.
Back to Bill Maher of Club Random on with Stephen A. Smith of the Stephen A. Smith Show.
That should tell you all you need to know. The fact that Justin Trudeau just stepped down in Canada. I mean, this guy had a very high approval rating 5 years ago, and he left really very unpopular because Canada became that kind of place where you really did not have the kind of free speech we do. And many other countries in Europe, now this is part of what Mark Zuckerberg was talking about. We don't want to become like these countries in Europe where they have rules about what you can say that's going to be censored simply because it's hurting somebody's feelings. You know, you can't say something about Islam because it's Islamophobia. But what if it's true? You know, we just had a terrible incident in New Orleans that was a jihadist attack. We want to be able to speak about that plainly and honestly without worrying somebody's going to say, don't say that because it's not all Muslims. Well, no one's saying it's all Muslims.
Yeah, that's the same thing. There's another group of people. I forget what you call them, but I think they should apply to them too. Let's get back to Stephen A. Smith and Bill Maher.
We're saying we need to discuss about this honestly and openly and patently. And you can't do that if somebody's looking over your shoulder and saying, well, this is going to hurt somebody's feelings. Okay, feelings are not as important as the First Amendment.
Fair enough. And it's one of the things that people allude to and complain about, as you have, about the left because of woke culture. With that being said, one would ask Bill Maher, in this day and age, why would you still call yourself a liberal or a Democrat as opposed to an independent, considering how you thinking and how polar opposite that appears to be to what's transpired with the Democratic Party? Because I'm reading this article from the Wall Street Journal, and essentially, to paraphrase, not your exact words, but you were talking about, what you still consider yourself, but that party is not the party that I've been looking at in recent memory.
Yeah, well, I've always been an independent. I mean, I never threw in with the
Right.
Democrats because I always knew they'd disappoint me at some point. But
Who cares about the labels? That's my answer. Call me whatever you want. I don't care. What's your take?
Joined your party. I've joined your party.
yeah, but old school liberal, yes. I mean, that's, I think, what I always was and always will be. As I say in the special, the people who are saying, oh, you're a Republican now. No, I'm not a Republican, and I never will be a Republican for all the reasons I haven't been. They're too religious. They're fiscal hypocrites who think it's awful when America spends money it doesn't have, except when they're in office, and then it's always perfectly okay. They're in denial about racism. They're in denial about the environment. They're always blaming the underprivileged when they should be blaming the overprivileged. And then they added to that shitty mixtape, they don't believe in democracy anymore. And they threw their lot in with a sociopath named Donald Trump, who thinks that elections only count when they win. So they have a sizable lead in being the more threatening party, I think, to this country. But that doesn't mean I'm going to hold my tongue about what I think is wrong about the left. And I don't. And there's a lot. And old school liberal, I could give you so many examples. It's a very big part of the show where I'm talking about the fact that people somehow think that wokeness is an extension of liberalism, when very often it's the opposite of liberalism. I mean, just like the Israel situation, the liberal position has always been a two-state solution. I still think that's the solution. Well, that's not the position of the woke. They want from the river to the sea. So you can have that position, but don't tell me that's the liberal position. The river to the sea does not mean a two-state solution. It means you want all of it for the Palestinians. That's fine. That's your position. It's not the liberal position. I haven't changed. You have.
Is anyone else seeing this, your stand-up comedy special?
That's Bill Maher on with Stephen A. Smith. And the part that stands out to me the most is that that little segment there had nothing to do with Trump. And you have to bring him in again and again and again. Bill Maher does not have a political compass unless it's there to diss Donald Trump. That's why we say Bill Maher has Trump derangement syndrome. I didn't vote for Trump. I think Trump is a great historical figure, but right now I'm not in the same wavelength as Trump and MAGA 2024. But I am not going to have Trump derangement syndrome. When Trump is right, he's right. Recently on the fires. What about that, Bill? Was Trump right on the fires? Let's hear you talk about that at some point. Literally in LA, place you know very well, burning to the ground. Donald Trump was right about it, dating back 7+ years. Laid out the whole plan, said you got to clean out the brush. You guys got to get the water ready. The winds are going to come up. You've got to get ready for all these different things to prepare on the prevention standpoint. None of them was done. None of them were done. Donald Trump said that to Gavin Newsom's face. And you have Trump derangement syndrome, and you can't even... Bill Maher would acknowledge that if we talked about it, but he wouldn't proactively bring it up. Let me know what you think, man. Is this possible? I don't even know if it's possible, man, for any type of cohesive discussion with these people. If Trump's not a part of the conversation, then don't make him a part of the conversation.
The next clip is ready below. Welcome to After Show Carnage.